Can you be my dad at graduation? A poor girl begs a millionaire. His response. The ballroom fell silent. Every fork stopped midair. Every whisper died. 2,000 eyes turned to watch as a thin girl in a faded yellow dress walked up to the stage where Nathaniel Cross stood, one of the richest men in the country, and said 5 words that would shatter everything he thought he knew about his life. Please, sir, be my father. Her voice cracked. Her hands trembled as she held out a wrinkled photograph. Nathaniel's face went white, because in that picture, smiling back at him, was a woman he'd spent 20 years trying to forget. Where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. 3 weeks earlier, Naomi Carter sat on the cracked front steps of her apartment building, watching the sun set behind the factory smokestacks. She was 17, with dark eyes that had seen too much and hands that were always a little dirty from her after-school job at the mechanic shop. Her graduation was in 21 days. 21 days until she'd walk across that stage, the first person in her family to finish high school. But there was a problem. Every graduate was supposed to bring a parent, a mother, a father, someone to pin the honor cord on their shoulder, someone to stand beside them in the family photo that would hang in the school's main hallway forever. Naomi had no one. Her mother, Ruth, had died 3 years ago. Cancer. The kind that ate through their savings first, then through hope, and finally through the woman herself. Naomi still remembered her last words, whispered in that hospital room that smelled like bleach and defeat. Find him, baby. Find your father. He didn't know about you, but he needs to. Promise me. Naomi had promised. But she'd been 14 then, and scared, and had no idea where to even start looking. Now, sitting on those steps, she pulled out the only photograph she had. Her mother, young and glowing, standing next to a man in an expensive suit. On the back, in her mother's handwriting, Nathaniel Cross. Boston. Spring 2006. Naomi had stared at that photo so many times she'd memorized every detail. The way her mother's hand rested on his arm. The way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. And most important, the way Naomi's own eyes, her nose, the shape of her face, matched his exactly. She'd tried finding him online, but Nathaniel Cross was like a ghost. Oh, his company existed, Cross Industries, a manufacturing empire worth billions. But the man himself? He gave no interviews, attended no public events. There were maybe 3 photos of him total on the entire internet, all from business journals, all taken from far away. Still looking at that old thing? Naomi glanced up. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chun, stood there with a bag of groceries. The old woman had lived in the apartment below since before Naomi was born. Just thinking, Naomi said quietly. Mrs. Chun sat down beside her, joints creaking. About graduation? Naomi nodded. Your mama would be so proud, Mrs. Chun said softly. First one to graduate. That's something special. Yeah. Naomi's throat felt tight. But everyone else will have their parents there. I'll be the only one standing alone. Mrs. Chun was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that would change everything. There's a charity gala. 3 weeks from now. At the Grandview Hotel downtown. All the rich people go. I saw it in the paper. They're honoring some businessman. Nathaniel Cross. Naomi's head snapped up. What? That man you're always looking for in that picture. He's going to be there. Getting some award for, what did it say? Community service or something. Rich people nonsense. Mrs. Chin stood up slowly. If you're going to find him, girl, that's your chance. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed in the tiny apartment she could barely afford. She'd moved to the cheapest place she could find after her mother died, working 3 jobs to pay rent and finish school. The walls were thin. She could hear the couple next door arguing, could hear the baby crying upstairs, could hear the buses rumbling past on the street below. She thought about her mother, about the stories Ruth used to tell on the good nights, before the sickness took her words away. I met him at a diner, her mother had said once, smiling at the memory. I was waitressing. He came in late after some business meeting. He was so tired, so sad-looking. I brought him coffee, and he just started talking about his life, about how lonely success was. We talked all night, Naomi. And for 3 months after that, we were in love. Then what happened? Young Naomi had asked. Her mother's smile had faded. He had to go back to Boston. I had to stay here. Your grandmother was sick, and I couldn't leave her. We promised we'd find a way to be together. But then his company had some crisis, and he disappeared into work, and I found out I was pregnant. I tried to tell him, called his office 100 times, but I could never get through. After a while, I stopped trying. I figured maybe he didn't want to know. But you said he didn't know about me, Naomi had protested. I don't think he did, baby. I really don't. The man I knew, he would have wanted to know. He would have cared. Now, 17-year-old Naomi stared at the ceiling and made a decision. She would go to that gala. She would find Nathaniel Cross. And she would ask him the question that had haunted her whole life. Why didn't you want to know me? The next morning, Naomi went to work at the mechanic shop. Her boss, Marcus, was a gruff man with kind eyes who'd given her the job 2 years ago when she'd shown up desperate and willing to learn. You're quiet today, he noted as she changed the oil on a pickup truck. Just thinking about graduation, Naomi said. Marcus nodded. Your mama would burst with pride, you know that? Everyone kept saying that. It should have made Naomi feel better. Instead, it just reminded her of the empty chair that would sit beside her at the ceremony. Marcus, she said slowly, if you wanted to get into a fancy event, like really fancy, where rich people go, how would you do it? He raised an eyebrow. What kind of trouble are you planning? No trouble. I need to talk to someone. And this gala thing is the only place I can find him. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. My sister works catering. Does all the big events downtown. The Grandview Hotel is one of her regular spots. Naomi's heart jumped. Really? I'm not saying she can sneak you in, Marcus warned. But maybe she could use an extra server for the night. If you're serious about this. I'm serious. He pulled out his phone. Let me make a call. 2 days later, Naomi stood in a small room behind the hotel kitchen, wearing a white shirt and black pants that Marcus's sister, Deborah, had provided. Around her, 20 other servers rushed around, preparing trays of fancy food that Naomi couldn't even pronounce. You stay in the back, Deborah instructed firmly. You clear plates. You refill water. You don't talk to the guests. You don't draw attention. Understand? Yes, ma'am. I'm serious, Naomi. These people, they're not like us. They don't see us. And that's good. It means they don't notice us. But if you step out of line, if you cause a scene, I lose my contract. You understand what that means. Naomi nodded. She understood. Deborah was risking a lot for her. Thank you, she whispered. Deborah's expression softened. Marcus told me about your mama. About what you're trying to do. I think you're brave. Stupid, maybe, but brave. Now, get out there. The ballroom was like something from a dream. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings, so high they seemed to touch the sky. Tables draped in white silk surrounded a stage where a podium stood. And everywhere, were people in clothes that cost more than Naomi's entire year's rent. She moved through them like a ghost, just as Deborah had taught her. Invisible, clearing plates, refilling wine glasses. Her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone must hear it. And then she saw him. Nathaniel Cross stood near the stage, talking to 2 men in expensive suits. He was older than in the photograph. His hair had gray at the temples now, and lines marked his face. But it was him. The same sharp jaw. The same dark eyes. Her father. Naomi's hands shook as she set down her tray. This was it. This was her moment. All she had to do was walk over there, and, excuse me, miss? She turned. A woman in diamonds gestured at her empty wine glass impatiently. Sorry, Naomi mumbled, grabbing a bottle. By the time she looked back, Nathaniel had moved. He was walking toward the stage now. Someone was introducing him, talking about his charitable donations, his business success, his dedication to community. The words washed over Naomi like water. She didn't care about any of that. She only cared about one thing. Nathaniel took the stage, accepted his award, started speaking about responsibility and giving back and things that sounded nice, but meant nothing to Naomi. She had to talk to him. Had to. But how? He was surrounded by people, protected by security, unreachable. The speech ended. Applause erupted. Nathaniel stepped down from the stage, and immediately people swarmed him. Business cards, handshakes, requests for meetings. Naomi watched it all from the side of the room, her hope crumbling. This was impossible. She'd been stupid to think she could just walk up to a man like that, and he was alone. Just for a moment, as he stepped away from the crowd to take a phone call, Nathaniel Cross was alone near the back entrance of the ballroom. Naomi didn't think. She just moved. Her feet carried her across the marble floor, past tables, past guests, past the point of no return. She was 5 feet away when someone grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" Deborah hissed. "Get back to work." "I need to talk to him," Naomi said desperately. "Are you insane? You'll get us both fired." But Naomi pulled free. She'd come too far. Waited too long. And if she didn't do this now, she might never get another chance. She walked straight up to Nathaniel Cross as he ended his phone call. "Excuse me, sir?" He turned, looked at her with polite confusion. "Yes." And suddenly, Naomi couldn't remember any of the speeches she'd practiced. Couldn't remember the careful words she'd planned. All she could do was pull out the wrinkled photograph and hold it out with trembling hands. "Do you remember her? Ruth Carter? From 18 years ago." Nathaniel's face changed. The color drained from it. His hand froze halfway to his pocket. "Where did you get that?" His voice was barely a whisper. "She was my mother," Naomi said. "And I think you're my father." The world seemed to stop spinning. Nathaniel stared at her. Really looked at her for the first time. And Naomi watched as recognition dawned in his eyes. Saw him see it, the resemblance. The impossible, undeniable truth written on her face. "That's not possible," he breathed. She never told me." "She tried," Naomi said, tears burning her eyes now. "She called. But she couldn't get through. And then she got sick and she died and I've been alone and I just wanted to meet you. Once. Before graduation. Because everyone else has their parents and I have no one and I thought maybe if you understood, you might." She couldn't finish. The words tangled in her throat. Security was moving toward them now. Deborah was there too, apologizing frantically. Someone was saying something about removing the server who disturbed the guest. But Nathaniel held up his hand. "Wait," he said quietly. Everyone froze. He looked at Naomi for a long moment. Then, slowly, carefully, he took the photograph from her hands. "Ruth," he whispered, staring at the picture. "My God, Ruth." "Sir, should we?" the security guard began. "No." Nathaniel's voice was stronger now. "No, give us a moment." He turned to Naomi. "What's your name?" "Naomi." "Naomi Carter." "Naomi." He said it like he was testing the sound, like it meant something. "Ruth named you Naomi." She nodded. His eyes were wet now. "Your mother she was the kindest person I ever met. The only person who saw me as just a man, not a name or a bank account. I thought about her every day for years. And when I couldn't find her, when she stopped answering, I thought. She never stopped loving you," Naomi said softly. "Even at the end, she talked about you. She said you didn't know. That you would have cared if you'd known." Something broke in Nathaniel's expression. He opened his mouth, closed it, seemed unable to speak. And then he did something that shocked everyone in that ballroom. He pulled Naomi into a hug. It was awkward and stiff and tentative, the hug of a man who hadn't held anyone in a very long time. But it was real. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry." Naomi couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They came in great, gasping sobs against this stranger's expensive suit. This man who was her father, who hadn't known she existed, who was holding her like she mattered. When they finally pulled apart, Nathaniel's face was wet too. You said graduation, he said hoarsely. When is it? 3 weeks. But sir, I didn't come here to ask for money or anything. I just wanted to meet you. To tell you that you have a daughter. That's all. He stared at her. You came all this way, found me at this event, just to tell me I have a daughter? And to ask. Naomi's voice broke. To ask if maybe, just maybe, you could come. To graduation. Everyone else will have their parents there, and I'll be alone, and I just thought. I'm sorry. This was stupid. I shouldn't have. Yes. Naomi stopped. What? Yes. Nathaniel's voice was firm now. Strong. Yes, I'll be there. I'll be at your graduation, Naomi. I promise you that. She couldn't breathe. You will. I miss 17 years, he said quietly. 17 years of your life that I can never get back. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be there for this. For graduation. And for whatever comes after. If you want that. I want that, Naomi whispered. I really want that. Nathaniel pulled out his phone. Give me your number. Your address. I want to know everything. Where you live, how you're doing, what you need. Sir, one of his assistants interrupted nervously. Your speech at the foundation dinner starts in 20 minutes. Nathaniel looked torn. He turned back to Naomi. I have to go. But I promise you, this conversation isn't over. I'll call you tomorrow. We'll talk. Really talk. Okay. Naomi nodded, not trusting her voice. He squeezed her hand once more, then disappeared into the crowd. Naomi stood there in the ballroom, surrounded by wealth and glitter and people who would never understand what this moment meant. She'd found him, her father, and he'd said yes. But as the night wound down and Naomi helped Deborah clean up, she couldn't shake the feeling in her stomach. That strange, twisting anxiety that whispered, what if he doesn't call? What if this was just a moment? What if tomorrow, in the cold light of day, Nathaniel Cross decides that a poor daughter from a dead waitress is too complicated, too inconvenient for his perfect life? She pushed the thoughts away. He'd promised. He'd looked her in the eyes and promised. That had to mean something. It had to. But 3 days later, when her phone still hadn't rung, when no calls came and no messages appeared, Naomi began to wonder if she'd been wrong. About everything. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth. The phone sat on Naomi's nightstand like a weapon. Every morning, she woke up and checked it. Every night, she fell asleep staring at the dark screen, willing it to light up with his name. 1 week passed. Then 2. Nothing. Naomi went to school in a daze. Her teachers noticed. Her friends asked questions she couldn't answer. How could she explain that for one perfect moment, she'd held hope in her hands, only to watch it slip through her fingers like water? Maybe he's just busy, her best friend Miriam suggested one day at lunch. Miriam was the only person Naomi had told about the gala, about finding her father. Rich people are always busy, right? He promised, Naomi said quietly, pushing food around her tray. He looked at me and promised. Miriam didn't know what to say to that. Neither did Naomi. The worst part wasn't the silence. The worst part was the hope that refused to die. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart jumped. Every unknown number made her hands shake. But it was always someone else. A reminder about graduation practice. A text from Marcus about her work schedule. Never him. Never Nathaniel. Graduation was in 7 days now. 7 days, and Naomi still had no one to bring. No one to stand beside her in that family photo. She'd gone from having a glimmer of possibility to having nothing at all, and somehow that felt worse than never having hope in the first place. On the Tuesday before graduation, Naomi's guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, called her into the office. Sit down, sweetheart, the older woman said gently. Naomi sat, her stomach tight with anxiety. Had she done something wrong? Was there a problem with her grades? Mrs. Patterson folded her hands on her desk. I wanted to check in with you about graduation. About the parent attendance form. Naomi's throat closed up. What about it? You haven't turned one in yet. The ceremony is this Sunday, and we need to know who'll be sitting in the family section. No one. Naomi said, her voice barely audible. There's no one. Mrs. Patterson's expression softened with sympathy that made Naomi want to crawl under the desk and disappear. What about other relatives? An aunt? Uncle? Family friend? There's no one, Naomi repeated. The words tasted like ash. My mom died 3 years ago. I don't have anyone else. Oh, honey. Mrs. Patterson reached across the desk like she might take Naomi's hand, then seemed to think better of it. You know, the parent portion of the ceremony isn't mandatory. You can still graduate. You'll still walk across that stage. But I'll be the only one standing alone in the photo, Naomi said. The only one without someone beside me. Mrs. Patterson didn't argue, because they both knew it was true. That night, Naomi sat on her apartment floor surrounded by boxes of her mother's things. She'd been avoiding these boxes for 3 years, unable to face the memories packed inside. But now, desperate and heartbroken, she tore into them like they might hold answers. There were photographs. Dozens of them. Her mother young and smiling, holding baby Naomi. Her mother at work, tired but happy. Her mother in the hospital, weak but still managing to smile for the camera. And there, at the bottom of the box, was a letter. The envelope was addressed to Nathaniel Cross, Boston, Massachusetts. But it had never been sent. The seal was still closed. Naomi's hands trembled as she carefully opened it. Inside, in her mother's handwriting, was a letter dated 18 years ago. Dear Nathaniel, I've tried calling your office 17 times. They won't put me through. They say you're busy, that you're traveling, that you can't be disturbed. I understand. You're building an empire. You have responsibilities. But I have something to tell you that can't wait anymore. I'm pregnant. I know we said goodbye. I know you have your life in Boston, and I have mine here. But I thought you should know that in 6 months you're going to be a father. I don't expect anything from you. I'm not asking for money or commitment or a future together. I just thought you had a right to know. If you want to be part of this child's life, call me. If you don't, I'll understand. I'll raise this baby with all the love I have, and I'll never say a bad word about you. But please, Nathaniel, just call. Just once. So I know you received this. So I know you made a choice, instead of just never knowing. I loved you. I still do. Ruth. Naomi read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Her mother had written it, had tried to tell him, but she'd never sent it. Why? Why hadn't she sent it? And then Naomi saw the other papers in the box. Medical bills. Past due notices. Eviction warnings. All dated around the same time as the letter. Her grandmother had been sick. Her mother had been broke. There hadn't been money for a stamp, much less for tracking down a man in another state who might not want to know. Her mother had been trapped by poverty and circumstance, and Naomi's father had never known she existed because of it. The unfairness of it all crashed over Naomi like a wave. Her mother had deserved better. She had deserved better. And now, 18 years later, history was repeating itself. Nathaniel Cross still didn't want to know. Still couldn't be bothered to call. Naomi made a decision in that moment, surrounded by her mother's things and her mother's broken dreams. She would go to graduation alone. She would walk across that stage with her head held high. And she would stop waiting for a father who clearly didn't want her. She was done hoping. But the next morning, everything changed. Naomi was at work, up to her elbows in engine grease, when Marcus called her into the office. "You've got a visitor," he said, his expression unreadable. "Who?" "See for yourself." Naomi wiped her hands on a rag and walked out to the front of the shop. And there, standing beside a black car that probably cost more than the entire building, was Nathaniel Cross. He looked terrible. His expensive suit was rumpled. His eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted. And when he saw Naomi, his face crumpled with something that looked like relief and grief mixed together. "Naomi," he breathed. She just stared at him, frozen between anger and disbelief. "I know," he said quickly, words tumbling out. "I know I promised to call. I know it's been 2 weeks. I know you probably hate me right now, and you have every right to, but please just let me explain." You had 2 weeks to explain, Naomi said coldly. Where were you? In the hospital. The world tilted. What? Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so tired it made him look decades older. The night after the gala, I had a heart attack. Stress, the doctors said. Too many years of working 18-hour days, not taking care of myself. I collapsed in my apartment. My assistant found me the next morning and called an ambulance. Naomi's anger wavered. I didn't know. How could you? I don't have social media. I don't do press releases about my health. And I was so focused on recovering, on getting out of that hospital, so I could keep my promise to you, that I didn't think about the fact that you'd be waiting. That you'd think I'd abandoned you again. He stepped closer, and Naomi could see it now, the way he moved more carefully, like everything hurt. The paleness beneath his skin. The tremor in his hands. I got out yesterday, Nathaniel continued. Against my doctor's orders, I might add. And the first thing I did, the very first thing, was come find you. I called Marcus, asked for your address, and drove straight here. You could have called, Naomi said, but her voice was softer now. I wanted to see you. To look you in the eye when I apologized for making you wait. For not being there when I said I would be. He pulled something from his pocket. A small box. And I wanted to give you this. Naomi took the box with shaking hands. Inside was a delicate necklace, a single pendant in the shape of a graduation cap. It was your mother's, Nathaniel said quietly. Or, at least it's like one I bought her years ago. She was taking night classes trying to get her GED when we met. She was so proud of working toward that diploma. I gave her a necklace just like this one to celebrate. I don't know if she kept it, but I wanted you to have one. For your graduation. Naomi couldn't speak. The necklace blurred through her tears. I know I can't make up for 17 years, Nathaniel said. I know a necklace doesn't fix anything. But I want to try, Naomi. I want to be there on Sunday. I want to stand beside you in that photo. I want to be the father I should have been all along. If only I'd known. If only Ruth had been able to reach me. She tried, Naomi whispered, pulling the letter from her pocket. She'd been carrying it with her like a talisman. She wrote you this. But she never sent it. Nathaniel took the letter with trembling hands. Read it. And broke. He didn't sob. Didn't make a sound. But tears streamed down his face as he read Ruth's words from 18 years ago. When he finished, he carefully folded the letter and held it against his chest like it was precious. I would have come, he said hoarsely. If I'd known. If this letter had reached me. I would have been there for both of you. I would have. His voice broke. I loved your mother, Naomi. Truly loved her. And I've regretted losing her every day since. Naomi felt her own defenses crumbling. This man, this stranger who was her father, was in pain. Real, deep pain that matched her own. Sunday, she said finally. Graduation is Sunday at 2 o'clock. Can you still come? I'll be there, Nathaniel promised. Even if I have to crawl there from a hospital bed, I'll be there. And this time, Naomi believed him. They talked for an hour in Marcus's office. Nathaniel asked questions about her life, her childhood, her mother's last years. Naomi answered carefully, not ready to give everything away yet, but willing to give something. When he finally left, promising to call that evening and every evening until graduation, Naomi stood in the parking lot watching his car disappear. Marcus came to stand beside her. That him? Your dad? Yeah, Naomi said softly. That's him. He came back. He came back. Marcus patted her shoulder. Your mama would be real happy about that. Naomi touched the necklace around her neck. She'd put it on immediately, and thought about her mother. About the letter she'd never sent. About chances missed and chances found. Yeah, she whispered to the empty air, to the memory of Ruth Carter, who had loved a man and raised a daughter alone. I think she would be. But as Sunday approached, as graduation loomed closer, Naomi couldn't shake the small, terrified voice in her head that whispered, what if something else happens? What if he gets sick again? What if, despite everything, you end up standing alone after all? She tried to ignore it, try to hold on to faith. But she wouldn't truly believe it, couldn't let herself believe it, until Sunday came. Until she saw him there with her own eyes. Saturday night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows from passing cars paint patterns across the cracked plaster. Tomorrow was graduation. Tomorrow, she would walk across that stage. And tomorrow, if Nathaniel kept his promise, she wouldn't be alone. But what if he didn't come? The thought gnawed at her like a hungry animal. He'd been in the hospital. His heart was weak. What if something happened? What if he collapsed again? What if, right now, he was lying in some emergency room while she counted the hours until a ceremony he'd never see? Stop it, she told herself. He promised. He's been calling every night. He's coming. But the fear wouldn't leave. At 3 a.m, Naomi finally gave up on sleep. She got out of bed and pulled her graduation gown from the closet. The blue fabric felt strange in her hands, too fancy, too official for someone like her. She'd worked 3 jobs to pay for the ceremony, for the cap and gown, for the class ring she couldn't really afford but bought anyway because it felt like proof. Proof that she'd made it, that she'd survived. She hung the gown on her door and looked at it for a long time. Tomorrow she'd put it on. Tomorrow she'd become someone new. The first person in her family to graduate high school. The girl who'd made it despite everything. But standing there in the dark, Naomi didn't feel victorious. She just felt scared. Her phone buzzed. A text message at 3 a.m. Her heart stopped. Was it the hospital? Was it? But no. It was Nathaniel. Can't sleep either? I keep thinking about tomorrow. About seeing you walk across that stage. I'm so proud of you, Naomi. Your mother would be too. Naomi's eyes burned with tears. She typed back with shaking fingers. What if something happens? What if you can't make it? The response came immediately. Nothing will stop me. I promise you that. I've waited 17 years to be your father. I'm not missing this. Naomi clutched the phone to her chest and let herself cry. Big, silent tears that she'd been holding back for weeks. For years, maybe. All the fear and hope and grief she'd been carrying alone for so long. She fell asleep like that, phone in hand, Nathaniel's promise glowing on the screen. When she woke up, the sun was already high. Graduation started in 4 hours. Naomi moved through her morning routine like a ghost. Shower. Hair. The dress she'd found at the thrift store, nothing fancy, but clean and pressed and the nicest thing she owned. She put on the necklace Nathaniel had given her, the little graduation cap pendant resting right over her heart. Miriam arrived at noon to help with makeup. You look beautiful, her friend said, dabbing powder on Naomi's cheeks. Like a whole different person. I feel the same, Naomi admitted. That's because you are the same. This just makes it official. Miriam stepped back to admire her work. Your dad really coming? He said he would. But Naomi met her friend's eyes in the mirror. But what if he doesn't? Miriam squeezed her shoulder. Then you walk across that stage anyway. With your head up. Because you earned this, Naomi. With or without him. They arrived at the school at 1:30. The auditorium was already packed with families. Proud parents holding cameras. Younger siblings squirming in their seats. Grandparents dabbing at tears before the ceremony even started. Naomi stood backstage with the other graduates, peeking through the curtain at the crowd. Looking for him. Searching every face, every suit, every person who might be Nathaniel Cross. But there were so many people, and she couldn't see him anywhere. Naomi Carter? She turned. Mrs. Patterson stood there with a clipboard and a gentle smile. Yes, ma'am. I need your parents' name for the program. For when they call you up for the honor cord ceremony. Naomi's mouth went dry. It's okay if there's no one, sweetie. We can have you skip that part. No. Naomi's voice came out stronger than she felt. His name is Nathaniel Cross. He'll be here. Mrs. Patterson wrote it down without comment, but Naomi saw the doubt in her eyes. Everyone knew Naomi had no family. Everyone expected her to walk alone. Well, Naomi thought fiercely, they're wrong. The The ceremony started at 2 o'clock sharp. Principal Morrison welcomed everyone. The choir sang. Someone gave a boring speech about the future and potential and doors opening. Naomi heard none of it. She kept scanning the audience, looking for Nathaniel. But from where she sat on stage with the other graduates, she couldn't see everyone. Couldn't know if he was there. What if he wasn't? The names started being called. Students walked across the stage one by one, shook hands with the principal, received their diplomas. When it was time for the honor cord ceremony, where parents came up to pin cords on their children's shoulders, Naomi's stomach twisted into knots. She watched as her classmates beamed while mothers cried and fathers stood proud. Watched families embrace on stage while cameras flashed. Each one was a little knife in her heart, reminding her of what she'd never had. Naomi Carter. Her name echoed through the auditorium. This was it. This was the moment. Naomi stood on shaking legs and walked to center stage. The lights were so bright she could barely see the audience anymore. Just shapes. Shadows. No way to tell if Nathaniel was out there or if she was about to stand alone in front of everyone. Principal Morrison handed her the diploma. Congratulations, Naomi. She took it with numb fingers. And now, Mrs. Patterson announced into the microphone, Naomi's father, Nathaniel Cross, will present her honor cord. Silence. Naomi's heart stopped beating. The stage felt enormous and empty. The whole world was watching her stand there alone, just like she'd feared, just like she'd always known would happen because that's how her life went. People left, people died, people. Sorry I'm late. Naomi's head snapped toward the voice. And there he was. Nathaniel Cross walked onto the stage, moving slowly but steadily. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than Naomi's entire apartment. His face was pale and drawn, but his eyes were locked on her with such fierce determination that Naomi forgot how to breathe. He'd come. He was really here. The audience murmured in confusion. Nobody knew who this man was. Nobody had ever heard of Naomi Carter having a father. But Naomi didn't care about them. She only cared about Nathaniel as he crossed the stage toward her. When he reached her, he held out the gold honor cord with trembling hands. May I? He asked softly. Naomi nodded, not trusting her voice. Nathaniel placed the cord over her shoulders. His fingers fumbled with the clasp. He was shaking as much as she was, but finally, he got it secured. Then he stepped back and looked at her. Really looked at her. Your mother would be so proud, he whispered, loud enough only for Naomi to hear. And so am I. Something broke open in Naomi's chest. All the fear, all the doubt, all the years of being alone. It cracked apart like ice in spring. And before she could think about it, before she could remember that everyone was watching, she threw her arms around Nathaniel's neck and hugged him. He caught her, held her tight, and Naomi heard his breath catch, felt his chest hitch like he might be crying. Thank you, she whispered against his shoulder. Thank you for coming. Always, he whispered back. From now on, always. The audience erupted in applause. Not the polite clapping they'd given everyone else, but real, thunderous applause that shook the auditorium. Because this wasn't just a graduation anymore. This was something else. Something bigger. This was a girl finding her father. A father finding his daughter. A family being born right there on stage in front of 2,000 witnesses. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. Nathaniel pulled a handkerchief from his pocket. Of course he had a handkerchief, Naomi thought with a watery laugh, and gently wiped her tears. Can't have you crying in the photos, he said, his own voice thick with emotion. Too late, Naomi managed. They walked off stage together. Nathaniel's hand on her shoulder, steady and sure. And Naomi felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Safe. After the ceremony, families gathered in the courtyard for pictures. Naomi saw her classmates with their parents, all laughing and posing and celebrating. For the first time, she didn't feel that familiar ache of loneliness. Because she had Nathaniel. They stood together in front of the big oak tree, where all the graduates took photos. Nathaniel's arm around her shoulders. Naomi holding her diploma, like a treasure. Miriam took the pictures on Naomi's old, cracked phone. Smile. Miriam called. Naomi smiled. A real smile. The kind that hurt her face because she wasn't used to it anymore. After the photos, Nathaniel cleared his throat awkwardly. I know this might be too much, but I made a reservation. At Antonio's. It's an Italian restaurant downtown. Very nice. I thought maybe we could have dinner? To celebrate. Antonio's. Naomi had walked past it 100 times. Had pressed her face against the windows to look at the fancy tables and the people in expensive clothes eating food she couldn't pronounce. I can't afford, she started. My treat, Nathaniel interrupted gently. Please. Let me do this for you. It's the least I can do after missing 17 years of birthdays and holidays, and his voice cracked. Please. Naomi nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They drove to the restaurant in Nathaniel's car. Naomi sat in the passenger seat of the expensive vehicle, feeling completely out of place. The leather was soft. The car was silent except for smooth classical music. It smelled like money and success and things Naomi had never experienced. You okay? Nathaniel asked, glancing at her. Just weird, Naomi admitted. All of this. Yesterday, I was alone. Today I have a father taking me to a fancy restaurant. Is it too much? We can go somewhere else if... No. Naomi turned to look at him. It's perfect. It's just new. He smiled, small and sad. New for me too. I've never been a father before. I've never had one before, Naomi said. So, I guess we're both learning. Antonio's was everything Naomi had imagined and more. White tablecloths. Crystal glasses. A waiter in a tuxedo who pulled out her chair like she was someone important. She felt completely out of place in her thrift store dress. But Nathaniel didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he noticed and didn't care. Order anything you want, he said, handing her a menu with prices that made her head spin. Naomi ordered the cheapest pasta dish she could find. Nathaniel ordered it too. To keep you company, he said, and added an appetizer and dessert and sparkling water that probably cost more than Naomi's entire grocery budget for a month. As they ate, they talked. Really talked. About her mother. About the years Naomi had spent alone. About Nathaniel's life in Boston, his empty mansion, his successful company that had cost him everything that actually mattered. I built an empire, Nathaniel said quietly, twirling pasta on his fork. But I was alone in it. No wife. No children. No one to share it with. And after the heart attack, lying in that hospital bed, all I could think was, this is it. This is what I have to show for my life. Money. Buildings. Nothing that matters. And then I showed up, Naomi said softly. And then you showed up. He met her eyes across the table. Gave me a second chance I don't deserve. Gave me a reason to. He swallowed hard. A reason to be better. You came to my graduation, Naomi said. That's pretty good already. It's the bare minimum, Nathaniel replied. But it's a start. They finished dinner as the sun set outside the restaurant windows. Gold light streamed through the glass, painting everything warm and soft. For a moment, Naomi let herself believe that this could last. That this wasn't just one perfect day, but the beginning of something real. When the check came, Nathaniel paid without looking at the total. Then he turned to Naomi with a nervous expression. There's something else, he said. Something I wanted to ask you. But it's big, and I don't want to pressure you, so if the answer is no, that's completely. What is it? Naomi interrupted. Nathaniel took a deep breath. I want you to come to Boston. To live with me. I have this huge house, completely empty except for me. You could have your own room. Your own space. You could go to college, any college you want, I'll pay for it. You could have a real life, Naomi. Not struggling to survive. Not working 3 jobs just to make rent. Naomi's heart stopped. You want me to move in with you? Only if you want to, Nathaniel said quickly. I know we just met. I know this is fast. But the thought of you going back to that apartment, being alone, working yourself to death like your mother did. His voice broke. I can't lose you too. Not when I just found you. Naomi couldn't breathe. It was too much. Too big. Too fast. I need to think about it, she whispered. Nathaniel nodded, looking disappointed but understanding. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Naomi, he reached across the table and took her hand. I meant what I said on stage. From now on, always. Whether you move to Boston or not, I'm your father. And I'm not going anywhere. Naomi squeezed his hand, feeling the tears return. Okay. They left the restaurant as the last light faded from the sky. Nathaniel drove her back to her apartment, and they sat in the car for a long moment, neither wanting the day to end. Thank you, Naomi said finally. For everything. For coming. For dinner. For caring. Thank you, Nathaniel replied, his voice rough with emotion. For giving me a chance. For letting me be your father, even though I don't deserve it. You do, Naomi said softly. My mom loved you. That's enough for me. She got out of the car and watched him drive away, her heart full of feelings she didn't have names for. Inside her apartment, Naomi collapsed on her bed, still wearing her graduation gown. She stared at the diploma on her nightstand, the necklace around her neck, the phone with pictures of her and Nathaniel, smiling like a real family. It had been a perfect day. But as she lay there in the dark, one question haunted her. What happens now? Boston. A new life. College. Everything she'd ever dreamed of, handed to her on a silver platter by a father she'd only just met. Was it real? Could she trust it? And more importantly, could she leave behind the only home she'd ever known, even if that home was just a tiny apartment in a poor neighborhood? These were the questions spinning in Naomi's mind as she finally fell asleep, still wearing her graduation gown, still clutching her diploma. Tomorrow, she'd have to make a choice. But tonight, just for tonight, she let herself be happy. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Naomi woke up Monday morning to find her life had exploded. Her phone was ringing. Not just once or twice, but constantly. Messages flooded in from classmates she barely knew. Friend requests from strangers. And when she finally checked social media, something she rarely did because data cost money she didn't have, she understood why. Someone had recorded the graduation ceremony. The moment when Nathaniel walked on stage. The hug. The tears. All of it. And the video had gone viral. Poor girl reunites with long-lost father at graduation, read one headline. Millionaire discovers daughter he never knew existed, said another. The video had millions of views. Millions of people watching the most private moment of Naomi's life, commenting on it, sharing it, turning her pain and joy into entertainment. Naomi felt sick. She turned off her phone and sat in the silence of her apartment, trying to process what this meant. The whole world knew her story now. Knew she was poor. Knew she'd been alone. Knew everything. A knock at the door made her jump. She opened it to find Nathaniel standing there, looking as exhausted as she felt. You saw, he said. It wasn't a question. Everyone saw, Naomi whispered. I'm sorry. I should have thought about cameras. Should have protected your privacy. I was so focused on getting there, on keeping my promise, that I didn't think about what might happen after. Naomi let him in. They sat on her worn couch in awkward silence. My phone hasn't stopped ringing, Nathaniel said finally. News stations. Reporters. Everyone wants an interview. They want to know our story. They want to turn this into some kind of feel-good spectacle. What did you tell them? Naomi asked. Nothing. I told my assistant to say no comment to everyone. This is your story, Naomi, not theirs. If you want to talk about it, that's your choice. But I won't let them exploit you. Naomi felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. He was protecting her. This man she barely knew was trying to shield her from the storm. Thank you, she said softly. They sat together for a while longer, and then Nathaniel said something that changed everything. Come to Boston with me. Today. Naomi's head snapped up. What? Not permanently. Not yet if you don't want to. But come see it. See the house. See what your life could be like. Just for a few days. Get away from all this chaos and give yourself time to think without cameras and reporters and strangers commenting on your life. Naomi looked around her tiny apartment, at the cracked walls and the leaking ceiling and the window that wouldn't close all the way, at the life she'd built from nothing, held together with duct tape and determination. Could she really leave it? What about work? She asked weakly. I have 3 jobs. I can't just.
Call them.
Tell them it's a family emergency. Tell them whatever you need to. Naomi. Nathaniel's voice cracked with desperation.
Please.
Just give me a few days. Let me show you what I'm offering. And then if you hate it, if you want to come back here and never see me again, I'll drive you back myself and never bother you again. That last part hit Naomi like a punch. The fear in his voice. The terror that she might reject him completely. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay, I'll come. The relief on Nathaniel's face was almost painful to see. They left that afternoon. Naomi packed a small bag. She didn't own much anyway and called her bosses. Marcus understood immediately.
Go, he said.
Be with your father. Your jobs will be here when you get back. The drive to Boston took 6 hours. They talked some. They sat in comfortable silence some. And slowly, mile by mile, Naomi felt the weight on her chest begin to lift. When they finally pulled up to Nathaniel's house, Naomi's jaw dropped. It wasn't a house. It was a mansion. 3 stories of glass and stone, with a circular driveway and gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine. It was beautiful and cold, and completely intimidating. This is where you live. Naomi breathed. This is where I exist, Nathaniel corrected quietly. I haven't really lived anywhere in a long time. He showed her inside. Room after room of expensive furniture and art and things that probably cost more than Naomi would make in her entire life. It was beautiful. It was also the loneliest place Naomi had ever seen. Your room is upstairs, Nathaniel said, leading her to a bedroom that was bigger than her entire apartment. It has its own bathroom, closet, whatever you need. Make yourself comfortable. I'll be downstairs if you need anything. He left her alone, and Naomi stood in the middle of that enormous room feeling completely lost. She called Miriam. You're where? Her friend shrieked when Naomi explained. Boston. At his house. Miriam, it's huge. I don't belong here. Stop that, Miriam said firmly. You belong anywhere you want to belong. This man is your father. That makes this your home too if you want it. But what if I can't do this? What if I'm not cut out for this kind of life? Then you come home, Miriam said simply. But Naomi, what if you are? What if this is your chance to finally stop just surviving and start actually living? After they hung up, Naomi lay on the massive bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, Nathaniel wanted to show her the college campus nearby. Wanted to talk about her future. Wanted to plan a life she'd never dared to dream about. But tonight, she just felt scared. The next morning, Naomi woke to the smell of breakfast. She followed her nose downstairs to find Nathaniel in the kitchen, attempting to cook pancakes. The kitchen was a disaster. Batter everywhere. Smoke rising from the pan. I'm not very good at this, he admitted sheepishly when he saw her. Naomi couldn't help but laugh. Let me help. They cooked together, and it was awkward and messy and somehow perfect. When they finally sat down to eat slightly burned pancakes, Nathaniel looked at her seriously. I want to tell you about your mother, he said. About us. About why I never knew about you. Would that be okay? Naomi nodded, not trusting her voice. I met Ruth at the lowest point of my life, Nathaniel began. My company was failing. I was drowning in debt. I'd driven across the country to try to save a deal, and I was so tired I could barely see straight. I stopped at this little diner in the middle of nowhere, and there she was, your mother, serving coffee and smiling like the world wasn't a terrible place. He smiled at the memory, but his eyes were sad. We talked all night. She told me about her life, her dreams, her sick mother she was caring for. And I told her things I'd never told anyone, about how lonely I was, how success felt hollow when you had no one to share it with. For 3 months, I drove back every weekend just to see her. It was the happiest I'd ever been. What happened? Naomi asked softly. My company had a crisis. A hostile takeover attempt. I had to get back to Boston, had to fight to save everything I'd built. I told Ruth I'd come back as soon as it was over, that we'd figure out a way to be together. But the crisis took months to resolve. And during that time, his voice broke. During that time, I got buried in work. Stopped answering calls. My assistant screened everything. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd reconnect with Ruth as soon as things settled down. But by the time I came up for air, 6 months had passed. I tried calling the diner, but they said she didn't work there anymore. I tried finding her, but I didn't even know her address. And eventually, I gave up. Told myself she'd moved on, that she was better off without me. Tears streamed down his face now. I never knew she was trying to reach me. Never knew about the baby. About you. If I had known, Naomi, if I had known, I would have been there. I would have given up everything for you and your mother. You have to believe that. I do, Naomi whispered. My mom believed it too. That's why she never said anything bad about you. She knew you didn't know. They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in grief for a woman who deserved so much better than what life had given her. She was sick for a year before she died, Naomi said quietly.
Cancer.
We couldn't afford the good treatments. Couldn't afford anything, really. She worked until the day she physically couldn't anymore, trying to keep us afloat. And at the end, in the hospital, she made me promise to find you. Said you deserved to know you had a daughter. Nathaniel covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. I could have saved her, he choked out. If I'd known, I could have paid for treatment. Could have. You can't think like that, Naomi said, reaching across the table to take his hand. You didn't know. And she wouldn't want you to torture yourself. She loved you even at the end.
She wanted me to know you.
That was her gift to both of us. Nathaniel squeezed her hand like it was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. Later that day, they visited the college campus. It was beautiful. Old brick buildings covered in ivy, students laughing and talking, an enormous library that made Naomi's heart ache with longing. You could go here, Nathaniel said as they walked through campus. Study whatever you want. I'll pay for everything, tuition, books, housing. Whatever you need. Why? Naomi asked suddenly. Why are you doing all this? Nathaniel stopped walking. Because you're my daughter. Because I lost 17 years with you. Because your mother struggled alone when she shouldn't have had to. Because, his voice cracked. Because I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and it means nothing if I can't use it to give you the life you deserve. But what if I can't do it? Naomi's voice came out small and scared. What if I'm not smart enough? What if I don't fit in? What if? Naomi. Nathaniel put his hands on her shoulders, making her look at him. You graduated high school while working 3 jobs. You survived losing your mother and being completely alone. You found me when you had every reason to give up. You're the strongest, bravest person I've ever met. You can do anything. Naomi felt tears burning her eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. I'm scared too. Scared of being a bad father. Scared of letting you down. Scared that one day you'll realize I'm just a lonely old man who doesn't deserve you. He smiled sadly. But maybe we can be scared together. And figure it out as we go. That night, they had dinner at a small restaurant near campus. Nothing fancy this time, just pizza and conversation. And for the first time, Naomi felt like maybe this could work. Maybe she could build a life here. But then her phone rang. It was Mrs. Chun, her old neighbor. And she was crying. Naomi, honey. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
What?
What happened? There was a fire. Your apartment building. It's gone, Naomi. Everything's gone. The world stopped spinning. Naomi heard Mrs. Chen's voice from far away, explaining about the electrical fire that had started in the unit below hers. About how the whole building had gone up in flames. About how everyone got out safely, but everything inside was destroyed. Her apartment. Her mother's things. The boxes of photographs. The letter. Everything.
Gone.
Naomi hung up and sat there in shock, unable to process it. Naomi? Nathaniel's voice was full of concern. What is it? She told him, watched his face go pale. I'll send people. We'll see what can be salvaged. We'll. There's nothing to salvage, Naomi said numbly. It's all gone. Everything I had left of my mother. The only home I've ever known. It's all just gone. Nathaniel moved around the table and pulled her into his arms. And Naomi broke down completely, sobbing against his shoulder while the restaurant staff politely pretended not to notice. She'd lost everything. Again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Later, back at the mansion, Naomi sat in her borrowed bedroom feeling completely unmoored. She had no apartment to go back to. No job. The mechanic shop had burned too, Marcus had texted her. No home. Nothing. Except Nathaniel. A knock at the door. He came in carrying something carefully wrapped in cloth. I found this, he said softly. In my things. I'd forgotten I kept it. He unwrapped the cloth to reveal a photograph. Ruth, young and glowing, laughing at something off camera. It was the same photo Naomi had carried, but this copy was pristine, untouched by time or tears. She was so beautiful, Nathaniel whispered. So full of life. I kept this picture for years, even after I thought I'd never see her again. Couldn't bring myself to throw it away. He handed it to Naomi. I want you to have it. I have the memory, but you should have the picture. Naomi took it with shaking hands, stared at her mother's face, so young, so happy, so alive. Thank you, she managed. Nathaniel sat beside her on the bed. The universe has a strange way of working, doesn't it? The fire took everything. But maybe it's also setting you free. You don't have to go back now. You can stay here. Build a new life. If you want to. Naomi looked at him. Really looked at him. This man who was her father. Who'd come to her graduation even though he was sick. Who'd given her a necklace and a chance and a future. Who was trying so hard to make up for years he'd lost through no fault of his own. I want to, she said quietly. I want to stay. But I'm so scared. That's okay, Nathaniel said, putting his arm around her shoulders. We'll be scared together. They sat like that for a long time. Father and daughter. Two broken people trying to build something whole. The next morning, Naomi called Miriam. I'm staying, she told her friend. In Boston. With Nathaniel. Miriam was quiet for a moment. Then, is this what you want? Really want? Or are you just doing it because you have nowhere else to go? Naomi thought about that. Thought about the mansion and the college, and the future spread out before her like a golden road. Thought about Nathaniel making terrible pancakes and telling her about her mother. Thought about having someone who cared, who showed up, who stayed. It's what I want, she said finally. I want to know my father. I want to go to college. I want to stop just surviving and start living. Is that okay? It's more than okay, Miriam said, and Naomi could hear the smile in her voice. It's everything your mom wanted for you. Over the next few weeks, Naomi settled into her new life. She enrolled at the college for the fall semester. Picked a major, social work, because she wanted to help people like her mother, people struggling to survive. She made friends with other students. Started therapy to process everything she'd been through. And she got to know Nathaniel. They had dinner together, every night. Talked about their days. Argued about movies and books, and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. He taught her about his business. She taught him about her world, about what it was like to be poor, to go hungry, to count every penny. It wasn't always easy. They had fights. Naomi would get overwhelmed and shut down. Nathaniel would hover too much, trying to fix things that couldn't be fixed. But they worked through it. Together. One night, 3 months after graduation, they sat in the library of the mansion. Naomi was studying for her first college exam. Nathaniel was reading beside her, occasionally helping when she got stuck on something. Can I ask you something? Naomi said suddenly. Always. Do you think my mom would be happy with how things turned out? Nathaniel set down his book. I think your mother would be incredibly proud of you. And I hope, she'd forgive me for not being there when she needed me. She already forgave you, Naomi said softly.
She told me that at the end.
Said it wasn't your fault. That sometimes life just happens. Nathaniel's eyes filled with tears. I miss her. I never stopped missing her. Me too, Naomi whispered. Every single day. They sat in comfortable silence, mourning the woman they'd both loved. Then Naomi said something that had been building in her heart for weeks. Can I call you Dad? Nathaniel's head snapped up. What?
Dad.
Can I call you that? Instead of Nathaniel? I know we just met, and maybe it's too soon, but it feels right. You feel like a dad. And I'd really like to have one. Nathaniel couldn't speak. He just pulled Naomi into a hug and held on like she might disappear. Yes, he finally choked out. Yes, please. I'd like that very much. From that day forward, Naomi had a father. Not the fairy tale kind who'd always been there. Not the perfect kind for movies. But the real kind. The kind who showed up late, but stayed. The kind who made mistakes but tried to fix them. The kind who loved her fiercely and would never, ever let her be alone again. A year later, Naomi stood in front of her mother's grave. It was the anniversary of Ruth's death, and Naomi had driven back to visit. Nathaniel stood beside her, holding flowers. Hi, Mom, Naomi said softly to the headstone. I kept my promise. I found him. And you were right, he didn't know. But he does now. And he's here. We're both here. She placed her flowers on the grave. Nathaniel placed his beside them. I'm so sorry, Ruth, he whispered. Sorry I wasn't there. Sorry you struggled alone. Sorry for everything. But I promise you, I'll take care of our daughter. I'll give her everything you wanted for her. I'll love her enough for both of us. Naomi took his hand. Her father's hand. She knows, Naomi said. Wherever she is, she knows. And she's happy. As they walked back to the car, Naomi thought about that night at the gala. About the scared, desperate girl who'd walked up to a stranger and begged him to be her father. About how one moment of courage had changed everything. Her life wasn't perfect now.
She still struggled sometimes.
Still missed her mother with an ache that never quite went away. Still had nightmares about being alone. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had a father who loved her. A future full of possibility. And a mother watching over her, proud of the woman she was becoming.
And that was enough.
More than enough. It was everything. Hey, Dad. Naomi said as they drove back toward Boston, toward home. Yeah, thank you. For saying yes. That day at the gala. Thank you. For saying yes. Nathaniel reached over and squeezed her hand. Thank you for asking. For giving me a second chance. For letting me be your father. They drove on in comfortable silence, father and daughter, two pieces of a broken family finally made whole. And somewhere, somehow, Ruth Carter smiled. Because her daughter wasn't alone anymore. And she never would be again.
The end.
Subscribe to this channel to support our growth.